How is everyone doing? Strength Chat episode 101, and today I've got a very special guest for you. The last time I spoke to this guy was all the way back in episode 57, sorry. Today I am joined by your very own strength and nutrition wizard, Jordan Syatt. How are you doing?
Good to talk to you, man.
How have you been? What's been happening? What's been going on in your world?
Everything's good, man. Everything's going well. Not too much. Just it's in New York City. I recently actually stopped coaching Gary Vaynerchuk, so just having a lot more time on my own to focus on my own stuff. And it's the new year, so everything's good, man. How about you?
Yeah, keeping busy. I think at the start of a new year, it's a clean start to have a look ahead. I've planned out my powerlifting competitions for this year and got some things in place that I want to work on with the podcast and the clients that I've got with now. So yeah, a good starting point.
That's awesome, man.
Since we last spoke, all the way at the start of last year, what have you been working on? What's been happening? Has anything else changed?
In terms of business-wise, it's mainly just been focusing on my inner circle. A lot of focus on my YouTube and my podcast as well. And then my own personal fitness. I think the two main ones are really a big focus on blood pressure, like a really, really big focus on blood pressure just for overall health and then the things that come as a result of that. And then also starting jujitsu and continuing my strength training. So actually this time last year, I was about 2.5 years into coaching Gary, and that was training him 7 days a week for 2.5. It ended up being 3 years straight. And my fitness was at like an all-time low. It was like all-time low, the worst, like the least amount of strength training, the least focus I've ever had on nutrition. I had just started to pick it back up again this time last year. And so now I'm a year into it, and I'm super happy with my physical condition, with my health, with my strength, which is like I think above all else, with how much of a habit it's become in terms of when I first started really getting back into it, it was tough. Yeah. Like it was not easy to get back in the gym, to start focusing on my nutrition. And I'm really in a groove now, probably starting about 2 months ago, in which I'm doing something every day, not even because like I feel like I have to, but because like I really enjoy it at this point. Yes. So just in a really good place with that.
I think that's great to hear from a coach's point of view, because I know sometimes I've chatted with other coaches. Sometimes you get drawn into that from clients that, it should be dead easy for you to train as a coach. And one of my biggest things that I've started doing this year, and I started doing it before Christmas as well, a little bit like what you said there, on the days that I'm not training or not lifting, I'll try and go for a walk. So when I'm in the gym, I'll try and go out and try and just go for a walk. Just a really light sort of stuff, but it does pay big dividends for your health. I think just adding in things like that. For everyone who, or for anyone listening who might not have listened to the previous episode that we chatted on, or know a little bit of your background, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself.
Yeah. So I got into the fitness industry from wrestling. So I started wrestling when I was 8 years old, and I made varsity as a freshman in high school. So I beat a junior out for the varsity spot, but I had to cut a lot of weight. So I was cutting from 112 to 103 every week. And technique-wise, I was a good wrestler. Endurance-wise, I was a good wrestler. But as a 13, 14-year-old kid going up against 17, 18-year-old kids, my strength wasn't where it needed to be. So I asked for a local gym nearby to see if I could do an internship with them. And fortunately, they accepted me, and I got into the internship. And that's really how I started strength training. That's what got me into all of it. And basically from there, it sort of steamrolled. I knew I wanted to be a coach. I knew I wanted to do that. So all through high school, I worked at the gym, and that's what happened.
Oh, nice. So obviously a lot of the content that you put out there is it's really helps me as a coach, and it gives me little tips to speak to my clients, because it's not overwhelming. It's, it's straight to the point, and you get something out of it. A lot of the posts that you've been doing at the minute, and the topics that we find out in the gym, is at the start of the year. If people haven't started in January, or heading into the next couple of months, everyone wants to, especially after Christmas and the New Year, wants to start losing weight or start losing fat. And the biggest thing for that is obviously being in a calorie deficit. But is that it? Is that the only thing that you need, or are there other factors of that? Because a lot of people will cut their calories or cut their food right down and think, oh well, this is 100% what I need to get my results. What are your thoughts on that? And is there any other elements to that?
It's a really great way to phrase that question, because the way you phrased it sets it up for me to answer it much more completely than how they phrase that question. Because most people would say, like, well, what do you have to do to lose fat? Mm-hmm. And to answer that question, in order to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit, just period. And that's like number one. But the way you phrase it is like, is that it? Well, no, that's not it. That is the base of it. That's the foundation of it. Without that, nothing else will work. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between what you need to make it work and what you need to optimize fat loss. They're two very different things, right? So to make fat loss work, you need to be in a calorie deficit. But you could be in a calorie deficit and, for example, not eating enough protein, in which case you're more likely to lose muscle, you're more likely to lose strength, you're less likely to be as full. So now all of a sudden you're losing fat, but you're also losing muscle, and it's probably not very sustainable. Yeah. So in order to optimize fat loss, now we have to talk about protein intake. We have to talk about hydration. We have to talk about strength training. We have to talk about your environment as a whole, who you're surrounding yourself with. So there are so many, or sleep as well. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. So no, calorie deficit is not all you need. But the reason I beat that drum so hard is because most people, even if they think they're in a calorie deficit, they're not. Yeah. And now from there, and this is our probably equally, if not more important part, you said a lot of people, they'll cut their calories, but now what? So one thing that people do when they hear about calorie deficit is they'll cut their calories, but they'll do it radically. Mm-hmm. They'll drop it by way too much, by a completely unsustainable amount. So now if we're talking about fat loss versus optimizing fat loss, now you have to understand, yes, you need to cut your calories, but you can't cut them so much that you are starving yourself, you're losing strength, you're losing muscle. It's not sustainable long-term. You have to find that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I picked up on there, because obviously in the start of the question, a lot of people, I said between weight and fat loss. You mentioned in every point there to actually lose fat loss, because you could lose weight. Yep. And, some of that weight could be actually muscle. Why do you think, or how do you go about educating your clients and with the content you're putting out there, that weight actually, even if you are in a calorie deficit, isn't the be all and end all, that there's other factors or other measurements that you can take. Weight might stay the same, but other measurements might change that might elicit fat loss or a step in the right direction towards their goals?
Great question. So in my Big Mac challenge, I ate one Big Mac a day every day for 30 days. And in the opening scene of the documentary, which is on YouTube, I go in and I step on the scale, and then I pee, and I record the whole thing. You can't see anything, but I record the whole thing. You can hear me peeing. And so I step on the scale, then I pee, and then I step on the scale again, and I lost over a pound just from peeing, because I woke up and I really had to pee super bad. But basically, that's one of my favorite examples to show people how much, even just this sparkling water, this can of sparkling water is 12 ounces. So if I step on a scale with that, if I drink all of that, then step on the scale, I'm going to weigh almost a pound heavier than if I didn't have that. So I think it's really important for people to understand that there's so much more involved in your weight than just your fat. And it's something that a lot of people don't understand. And this is why it's so important to specify, but your body fat is literally just your body fat. Your weight is your body fat, your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, your
your muscle, it's what you ate the day before, what you ate this morning, what you just drank, like everything. If like, it's one of the reasons people say like, oh yeah, this person weighs like 90 pounds soaking wet, right? Why do they say soaking wet? Because when you're drenched in water, then you're going to weigh more, right? Especially if you have clothes on. So it's like, we all sort of know these things logically, but when emotionally we step on the scale, we often tend to just think, oh, well, the body fat isn't moving the way I want it to. So in order to understand, like to get other forms of measurement, obviously use tape measure is a really good idea. Personally, I think one of the best ones is either your belt, like if your belt loops are getting smaller or if your pants are getting bigger. It's like probably my ultimate favorite, because that's a very consistent form of measurement that like you can always tell when someone's like, oh yeah, I'm gaining weight, like it's getting a little bit tight. It's like you should go with the opposite direction as well. Like if it's getting looser and looser and looser, that's a really good sign that you're losing fat as well. So yeah, I mean, there's many ways to know and to teach the difference between weight and fat loss. But I think the most important thing that people really need to understand is that your weigh-ins are just data. It's just more and more data that you're getting over time.
Yeah. And as you know, with anything when it comes to data is how do you use that? For some people like the stats and seeing how their body fat percentage, but one of the biggest things, and you know, I'm glad you mentioned it there, is, you know, how are your clothes fitting, you know, how the tape measurements, because I think people get sometimes too hung up on weight. Why do you think that is?
Why do they get so hung up on weight?
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, I think it's usually the easiest form of measurement that you can have, right? It's like it stands right in front of you. When you go to the doctor, that's what they take. I think it's the one that's most readily accessible. It's also one that is it's very interesting about why do people hold on, like really think about that specific measurement. I think it's the one that's the most readily accessible, but also it's just a clear number, right? It's like your pant size isn't just a clear number. You can't like, oh, well, it feels looser today. So it's like, all right, well, maybe it's just they're worn out or they're getting old or whatever it is. I think when you see that clear number, it gives you an idea like, yeah, this is it. Like this is clearly working or it's not. The issue is when people think that it's working or it's not solely based on the day-to-day measurements. I think what's really important is not just the data, but how you read the data.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if you think that you're going to get on the scale and lose a pound every single day, or let's say every single week, if you think you're going to lose a pound every week, that's 52 pounds at the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's most people, I mean, don't need to lose 52 pounds by the end of the year. Some people do, and that's totally fine. But let's say you need to lose 100 pounds. Like you're going to do 104 pounds in 2 years, or let's say you lose 2 pounds, because some people, they just want to lose 2 pounds in a week, every week.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to lose 104 pounds in a year. Like that's, some people can, but they're few and far between, and that's not the norm.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, really important to remember that. And I think if you're going to use the scale as data, you have to learn how to read the scale and read the data, which basically for me means compare it month to month. So compare it June 1 to July 1, July 1 to August 1, August 1, September 1. And that way you can look at where you were month to month and see if the trend is going down or staying the same or going up.
Yeah, I suppose with that, and what I like to do with the clients that I'm working with is make sure that is done consistently. You know, the consistent time of day, and you know they've not ate loads before they've jumped on the scale, and that sort of stuff. I think sometimes, and after speaking with other coaches as well, that the scale is sometimes it's not a measurement of how you feel, or it's not it's not a happiness scale, if you like, you know, if you're feeling better. Because I think sometimes, especially with sort of the body stat machine that we use at the gym that I work at, when it's going well, it's a little bit like a sports coach. When the team's winning and everything's going well, they're the best coach in the world. When the team's not doing so well, if the coach needs to get sacked, it's not happening. when it comes to actually, you know, taking, using a body stat machine that, or taking weight, is there any times where you might not make somebody jump on the scale and just take measurement? Because I know sometimes people can get weights in their head and get a little bit too stressed out about it. Is there a time that you just wouldn't weigh people?
Yeah, so it's another really good question, man. These are great. I would say that when you're trying to develop a healthier relationship with the scale, in the same way, like with food, right? So some people, let's say, for example, someone has a trigger food, and that trigger food is, I don't know, peanut butter.
Right.
Right? It's like, if they have peanut butter in the house, they're going to eat the entire jar.
I can relate to that.
When you first start trying to develop a healthier relationship with peanut butter with that individual, you don't keep peanut butter in the house. It's a trigger for them. So first you eliminate it, you remove it, just so that they can eliminate the trigger. Then from there, instead of bringing in a whole jar of peanut butter, maybe you bring in like little mini single serving packs, right? Where it's like they can only have one at a time. Yeah. And then from there, over time, they develop a healthy relationship with food. They don't feel like they're doing anything bad, and then they can improve. Same thing with the scale. If someone has a relationship with the scale in which they get panic attacks or they freak out when they step on it and it doesn't go their way, then what I'll do is I'll say, you're not going to step on the scale for the next month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is. No more stepping on the scale. We'll track other forms of progress, their measurements, their pictures, their strength, all this stuff. Then I'll ask them, I'll be like, do you want to step on the scale again? If the answer is yes, because they want to develop a better relationship with it, then we'll start off with getting on the scale. If their answer is no, I have no interest in doing it, I don't need it, then I won't. There's no reason to force it, right? There's no reason, it's not like they're scared of drinking water, right? If they're scared of drinking water, that's a serious issue that we're going to have to really get over. The scale isn't that serious of an issue. So I don't really have a problem with someone saying, I'm not ever going to step on the scale again. My issue is when people won't step on the scale solely because they're scared of it, and then they tell other people that the scale is inherently bad as a result.
Right.
The scale isn't inherently bad. And a lot of people will be like, well, don't care about the scale. What the scale says, it's just an inanimate object. It's like, that's exactly right. It's just an inanimate object. So it's not bad. Yeah. It's not good, and it's not bad. There should be no negative emotion with it. My ideal scenario is getting someone to a point in which they can feel confident stepping on the scale, regardless of what the number says, up or down, and not let it affect their emotions in any way, shape, or form. Not let it affect their actions. Obviously, I don't think everybody will get to that point, but I think 90% of people absolutely can.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think sometimes, and it's good there, you said that it is just an object, but for such a just a simple object, people it can become a little bit of a boogeyman, if you like. People can get too worried about it, and a lot of people think that that has to be done. I've sat down with other clients before, and I've been like, right, we're going to go through some measurements today, and I always ask, especially if it's their first assessment and they maybe haven't trained as much before. Do you want to take your weight? Do you want to give it a go? Some people are like, yeah, I've never really tracked it before, and then it becomes a measurement, like you say, that you can track on the first of the month all the time. But some people are just flat out, oh no, I don't want to jump out on there. And I think the important thing on that is, that's fine, that's okay, because that comes down to, we're all individuals. If someone's coming in and say for example for powerlifting, it might be that, right, we're just going to focus on the numbers of your lifts. When we get closer, or when we enter a competition, that's when we're going to look at weight. If you're just coming in for general health, it might be like what you mentioned about the first couple of times. Right, let's just feel how your clothes are fitting, how the belt buckles are fitting, because it does, especially with the conversation I've had with clients at the minute. The scales are getting too much grief and cause people too much grief than what I think they should. Just when you chatted there about the foundation is a calorie deficit to then build on fat loss and then all the other elements with it. Is there, because like you mentioned, you might drop your calories down, but you might actually start losing muscle as well. Are there such things as good calories and bad calories? And is there a right way and a wrong way, or a better way and a not so good way of actually dropping those calories down? Because like you say, some people might drop it right down and only survive off celery and water for however long. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
So in terms of, is there such a thing as a good calorie and a bad calorie? No, that doesn't exist. Main reason being, when people tell you that there's such thing as a good calorie and bad calorie, they're trying to trick you. They're trying to trick you, and they're trying to use the word calorie interchangeably with food.
Yeah.
They're not the same words. They are not synonymous. They mean two completely and utterly separate things. Calories are how much energy is in the food. And it is regardless of their nutrient composition. It's just how much energy is in the food, right? It's sort of like, you could take like a light bulb, for example, right? Like you have a light bulb. There are different wattage of light bulbs, right? It's like one, or like you have like one light bulb might be like 250 watts, but like maybe a lightsaber is like 5,000 watts or whatever it is. It's like, it's just the energy inside of them, right? It's not it doesn't tell you what it actually is. So in terms of calories, the way I like to think of it is like, imagine a mile, right? Or a kilometer, right? So you have a mile, a kilometer, whatever it is, like 1 kilometer is always 1 kilometer, whether it's on the sand or the pavement or in the forest, or we're uphill or downhill or whatever you are. 1 kilometer is always 1 kilometer, regardless of what the makeup of the ground is. So it might take you longer to run a mile in the sand than it would, or a kilometer on the sand, than it would say to run a kilometer on the pavement, just because the composition of that sand makes it more difficult. But it doesn't change the fact that you're still running a kilometer. So same thing with a calorie. It doesn't matter if you have 100 calories from an apple or 100 calories from a donut. It's still the same total amount of energy within those two foods. The difference is the nutrient composition of those foods. Yeah. So obviously, an apple is going to be way more nutrient dense than a donut. It's going to have more fiber. It's going to have more vitamins and minerals. It's going to fill you up more. The overall nutrition will be better from an apple than it will be from a donut. Yeah. But that doesn't change the fact that the 100 calories of each is an equal amount of calories.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, absolutely. I like the analogy of the kilometer. I might have to use that one next time I sit down and chat with my clients. I think a good analogy there, because I know sometimes when people sit down with calories, and you know why I asked about the good food and bad food, is that the whole mentality of if it fits your calories or if it fits your macros. So you know they might have the donut because essentially to them it is still 100 calories. But obviously you mentioned there about the like nutritional value of the food. Would you, because a lot of people will then, you know, if they use MyFitnessPal or whatever it may be, obviously you can get a breakdown of what your actual micronutrients are. In terms of actually coaching it and, you know, educating the people a little bit more rather than going into fine detail being, oh my God, I'm 110% of my iron that I've got today. How do you go about coaching people? Do you just coach people or mention to people just about quality of food, or do you use the micronutrients? What's sort of the best way to go about it? Because I know some people, like I say, will look at their MyFitnessPal, but I'm under on this. What are sort of your thoughts on that?
So for me, I look at like large scale issues, right? So number one, the biggest issue right now is very clearly an obesity epidemic, right? It's like there are people who massively struggle with their weight, and we need to help them lose weight in order to not only achieve their goals, but be healthier. So when I'm working with people who want to lose weight and be healthier, number one always has to be calorie deficit, just because without that, nothing else works. Mm-hmm. Now, from there, then we can go into optimizing fat loss. And that's whenever someone who has never counted their calories or they've really struggled with their weight, when they start reducing their calories, one of the things I always do is I say, you don't need to change anything that you're eating. Just eat the same foods, but reduce how much you're eating. Yeah. The reason I say this is because when someone says, do this, eat more vegetables, eat more fruits, usually their first response is, fuck you, right? It's like, they don't need to do that. So for me, I'm like, hey, you don't need to change your foods. Just make sure that you eat this amount of calories. Yeah. On their own, they will very quickly realize if the majority of their diet is pizza and Cheetos and Skittles, then they're going to be very hungry and they're not going to be very happy with that. Yeah. So then they'll say, well, so I'm really hungry. What can I do to fix this? It's a great question. What do you think you should do? Well, I don't know, like maybe I should have more fruits and vegetables. Oh, that's a great idea. I think that would be really smart. Yeah. So now they start eating more fruits and vegetables. And then what happens? Then they start eating more fruits and vegetables. Then they start losing weight. And now they start seeing their results from the weight loss and they're like, this is amazing. It's working. And now that drives more action for them to keep making progress. So then from there, essentially, that just went from them having very high calorie, low nutrient foods that didn't fill them up to on their own eating more nutrient dense foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, and then getting more protein in because now they want to see more results in the gym. They want to stay more full. And so essentially, rather than me saying, all right, we want to focus on you getting more beta carotene in because we really want to focus on your vitamins and minerals, it's like they're doing it on their own because they're eating more fruits and vegetables. If they really wanted to learn more about micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and whatnot, they would have went to school for it. Yeah. Like that would have been something they're really interested in, but they're not. So as a coach, your job, education is part of your job, but you also, if you're a really good coach and teacher, you have to understand that they don't have to understand the Krebs cycle in order to have a healthy body weight, right? It's just, that's just not needed. So you have to figure out what is the most amount they need to know in order to get the results that they want. And then if they want to learn more, then they can ask and they can learn more. But my job isn't to educate them with a college degree in nutrition. My job is to help them get their goals as quickly and as sustainably as possible. And as long as I can do that, really by helping them make their own best decisions rather than me handing out orders like you have to do this, you have to do that, then my job is done.
Yeah. I like the fact that you mentioned teacher there, because I know some people will come in and what do I need to do? Do I need to eat this, this, and this? And actually, you know, the majority of people, if not everyone, knows that there's foods that they need to eat more of, and there's foods that they need to eat less of. And I always why I like the fact that you mentioned teacher there is I like to think as coaching and training, when people come in, it's a little bit, if they've never trained before, it's a little bit like primary school or junior school. You know, you teach them the basics, then they get promoted to high school, and you learn a little bit more. And it's always at some point they've got the coach isn't going to be there. Same in school, the teacher isn't going to be there. You're going to have to do maths by yourself in the real world. When you're in the supermarket, you're going to have to pick the food by yourself. So I think that's, when you mentioned in there as teaching, it is a good way to think about it, because some people can sometimes be a little bit too dependent on coaching and think that they've got all the answers. But I like to say to my clients that you're not all robots. You've all got minds of your own. And, you know, if you want to learn a little bit more, exactly what you said, you can give them a little bit more, but essentially they just need the tools to be able to, like you say, get the best results that they can.
100%. And that's exactly why I don't give meal plans. Mm-hmm. It's like, for me, I look at as a meal plan as giving someone a fish. Whereas if I teach them how to track their calories and incorporate their favorite foods within those calories, now I'm teaching them how to fish so they can do it forever. One of the things about online coaching that's really interesting is you can work with people all over the world, right? So the foods that I have available to me in New York might be very different than what someone has available to them in Singapore. Yeah. So if I'm going to give them a meal plan with foods that I have available to me, that makes no sense because they literally might not have them available. And even if they did have them available, having a meal plan is something where you're like, when you go to a birthday party or you go to a social event or you go to wherever, you go on vacation, a lot of the foods won't be there. You probably won't want to have them because you want to indulge a little bit. It's like, and you freak out and you, oh my God, like I can't have this food. Like I'm going to ruin everything. Whereas if I just teach you, hey, this is what an appropriate portion size looks like for your goals, you can include any food in the entire world that you want, and you'll be fine as long as you stay within this energy range on a regular basis. You're good. Now they can actually do it on their own, and they don't need me there. That's, I think, the mark of a great coach isn't they can get someone results in 4, 8, or 12 weeks. The mark of a great coach is someone who can help someone learn how to get results on their own, and even and especially once they're no longer coaching with them, that person can sustain it for life. That's what a great coach is.
Yeah, that's a really great point. You know, every time I'll speak to clients, when it's strength training, nutrition, you know, I don't want it for that 12 weeks. You've got to be, because you're going to eat for the rest of your life. So you've got to make sure that, you know, you can make the right decisions when you need to be, especially when when you might be on holiday or away with work or whatever it might be. On the other end of that, which leads sort of quite nicely into my next question, I saw a post that you put out there on Instagram about the 80% rule, and that sometimes being strict at 100% is a little bit unsustainable. And as I was looking at it, I'd literally had a conversation with some people in the gym about this, and I'm saying, oh, but I want to smash it 100%. I'm going to be strict all the time. And especially when we've got the emails and set up the chat. I thought this was going to be a really good question for you to just explain as to why the sort of 80% rule isn't the case of, right, actually that means that, on a weekend everything goes out of the window, but why the 80-90% rule is actually a little bit more sustainable than thinking that you have to be 100% on it all the time.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So there's a lot to say about it. I would say number one is, if you want to be really strict and really rigid and go 100%, by all means, go for it. Like I as a coach and with an outrageous amount of experience, I've learned if I tell someone not to do something, that's exactly what they're going to want to do.
Yeah.
So if you want to go 100%, then by all means go 100%. But what I would really encourage you to do is be very objective with how long you can do that for. And as a result, be objective with how well you're actually sticking to that 100%. Because what most people will do, maybe they'll do it Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday. Maybe they'll do it for a month straight or 6 months straight. But eventually it'll get to a point where they say, screw it. Like, it's not worth it. And they binge and they give up. And they reach a point where they never go past, they never level up. They never get past this certain point of strength, physique, whatever it is. It's always just like they can't get over this hump. And it's usually because they have this idea that they need to be 100% rigid and perfect all the time, or they'll never get over it. And as soon as they're about to, it's just like they burn out. They're tired. It's like it's not worth it anymore. Yeah. Whereas if you follow more of the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, literally right here, my girlfriend made cookies. Like, I'm going to have a cookie or two today. Now, if I was having an entire day's worth of cookies every day, or doing it like for the entire weekend, just like binging out the whole weekend, that wouldn't be the 80-20 rule. Yeah. But when I can have one or two of these cookies today, and then the rest of my day is on point, that's huge. Now I'm not like craving, oh my God, I just want this cookie. I just want this muffin. I just want this pizza. I had it. I'm good. I'm done. I can keep going and I can be consistent long-term. Most people, the idea of having one cookie in the middle of the week freaks them out. They think they're going to ruin all their progress. Whereas like when you can do that without thinking that you're going to ruin all your progress, you set yourself up for more success than you could have imagined.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite quotes that I quite like is that one bad meal doesn't undo all the good meals that you've had, but then equally one I'm having a cook now. They look good. But then equally one good meal doesn't undo all of the bad stuff or bad food that you might have had. And that, goes back to the first sort of topic that we chatted about, is that when people are trying to be 100% all the time, they'll massively drop their calories down, thinking that this is their 100%. And then that's when they'll either go, like you say, right, screw it, I'm going to have this. And like you say, they end up not getting the results that they want. Quite a lot of topics and great content on there. A few sort of myth busting, if you like, that people think about. What would be your sort of take home points or words of wisdom from what we've chatted about today?
Man, I would say there's a lot that we spoke about, and I really appreciate your questions because they're very good. And I do a lot of podcasts, and very rarely do I have discussions that people don't ask me the same exact questions over and over and over again. So, right. Like, really great podcast, man. Oh. I would say if there's one thing that I could really hammer home with someone, it's this idea that you can't screw up as long as you get back on track. I think it's really, really important for people to understand this, because most people, when they have a cookie, they think they screwed up. Yeah. They think they ruined everything. They think that it's all like, oh, what's the point? And once they eat this cookie, then they go have 5 more cookies, and then they go get pizza, and then they go get, they get a whole ice cream, like pint of ice cream, whatever it is. As soon as you realize that you're never more than one bite away from getting back on track, one workout from getting back on track, and that just because you had one bad week or one bad meal or one bad day doesn't mean you're in your progress, the more likely you are to succeed, because all it takes is just getting right back on track to keep going.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think that's a really good way to think about it. And, you know, the amount of times that I'll say to people, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. And the fact that, you know, you've reiterated it there as well, just goes to show that as a coach, I'm not going too far wrong. And, you know, for everyone listening, I hope that sort of, puts that message onto you that, look, you know, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. You know, even as coaches, you know, having a cookie every now and again. I think I'll have to go get some now. For everyone listening who, you know, might want to have a look at the content that you put out there, or, you know, you mentioned with the inner circle as well, where can people find you or work with you, or, you know, get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just find me on Google. You go to my YouTube, Jordan Syatt, Syatt. My own podcast, the Jordan Syatt Mini Podcast, Instagram, Syatt Fitness. You can find me on Google. You'll find all of it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me, Jordan. Really, I enjoyed chatting with you in the previous podcast. Really enjoyed catching up with you in this podcast. Everyone listening, 100% check out the YouTube, especially the mini podcast that Jordan does. I listen to that. That's really interesting. I especially like it when you're chatting with the people in the inner circle as well. You know, that is really beneficial. So for everyone listening, 100% check that out. Thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me, Jordan. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.